Acting Superintendent Chukwuagu to forward the case file to the Director of Public Prosecutors. Adekumaya ruled that the case be adjourned to October the 3rd for mention pending the advice of the DPP.
These two boys were sentenced to death in 2017 for a gruesome murder they committed in 2012. The Cynthia Osokogu story was one of the earliest stories in Nigerian history that flashed a large light on the deadly risk of befriending strangers online. Prior to this, it's not as though people haven't met their gruesome end after meeting people they saw online. It has been happening way before 2012. But there was something about this case that was different from the rest of them. Maybe because Cynthia was a very pretty girl, or maybe because her father was a retired Major General. And I think her killers had no idea who they were dealing with. Echezona Nwambufo was a 300 level accounting student in Unilag. He was already a criminal, but one of those petty ones. He was said to lure girls to hotels, he would drug them and then rob them. In most cases, he would sexually assault the girls. But his major aim was to steal their mobile phones, because this was the era of BlackBerry. And if you remember that era so well, BlackBerry was something that people were killing for, stealing for, and pretty much doing the worst things for. A lot of young girls would have, like they said, lost their virginity just to be able to get BlackBerry. Hell, they made a whole Nigerian movie about the fever of BlackBerry and what pinging did to us. So a lot of people were pushed to do things just to get this BlackBerry. And Echezona may have been one of those people, except in his case, one BlackBerry was not enough. He needed more. And his targets were flashy girls. Girls who seem to already have money. Girls who seem to already have the BlackBerry. And he was successful for the most part. However, when he met Cynthia on Facebook in 2012, he thought he had hit a jackpot. Little did he know that this was going to be his last bus stop, in the worst way possible. Now, his colleague, a young man named Ezike Olisa, was also a 300 level student, but not in Unilag. He schooled in Anambra State. It's unclear how they knew each other. Maybe they were friends from childhood or from secondary school. And it's not known whether or not Olisa had always been assisting Echezona in his previous criminal activities that he had been getting away with. However, when it came to Cynthia Osokogu, Olisa was fully active. Now, this is how Cynthia was lured. Cynthia was an only daughter and the last child of a retired Major General. She had 3 older brothers, and she was already doing a master's in Nasarawa State University. She was also a fashion model. Some sources said a beauty queen from one pageant. And she owned a relatively big boutique in Abuja called Dress Code. So she was a young businesswoman, a young business girl, if I may call it, because she was just, 24 years old. Some sources said 24, some sources said 26. But from what I remember then, she must have been younger, because I remember she was probably 23 or 24. Now, her boutique was, it was said that she had relatives abroad who would import these clothes for her and she would sell. Sometimes she goes to the market to get it. And so when she met Echezona on Facebook, they hit it off immediately. It's not very clear what their conversation was, but I would imagine it had to do with one of those boy meets girl situation where Echezona would have to flirt, get her to trust him. And this online friendship on Facebook continued for 4 months straight. And 4 months, honestly, is a long time to know someone online. Although I've known people online for many years and I still don't feel the need or trust them enough to meet them. But 2012 was a different time. At this time, not many bad news was coming out of people meeting people on Facebook. For what is what, a lot of people were meeting the love of their lives on Facebook. A lot of people were connecting with old friends. So this was a time Facebook was already booming for the best part of it. At this time, not many people was using it for evil. If anything, it was to scam you of selling a fake product, and then they block you or unfriend you or probably hack into your account. But when it came to meeting people on Facebook, it was almost easy to fall for it because everybody had their pictures on Facebook. Everybody had mutual friends. Everybody lay in bed. People used their real names. People used their government names. People were posting where they were. So everybody knew everyone's business there. So it was almost easy to trust And I think this must have been the case for Cynthia, especially after she had been speaking with this young man for nearly 4 months. Eventually, their conversation dived into what she did, and I think she may have told Echezona that she owned a boutique and that she was looking to come to Lagos to purchase some clothes to restock her shop. And Echezona used this opportunity to present and offer himself. He lied to Cynthia that he could help her get these clothes for the cheapest price, that he knows the best market, the best shops, where to get it. He pretty much just offered his services to assist Cynthia, that when she comes to Lagos, he would help her move around because the buying process would probably be difficult. And obviously, Cynthia thought this was a nice and kind gesture. This was a young man willing to assist her. And again, she already had trust in him. But somewhere along that conversation, Echezona introduced Cynthia to one of his friends, whom he said was his brother, Ezike Ikechukwu Olizaoloka. So Echezona introduced the both of them on Facebook. One of those, add up my friend. He's also a businessman. He knows these businesses too. He knows good shops. His uncle has boutiques. He would, they just made it look like they were there to help her when she comes to Lagos to purchase clothes for her boutique. It was also stated that they helped her book the flight. So, on the 20th of July 2012, Cynthia books a flight from Abuja. She landed in Lagos. She calls her mother and tells her mother, I'm in Lagos, and after a while, I'll be back home once the purchase is done. After she landed, she waited for Echezona, who came to pick her up at the airport and took her to Cosmilla Hotel in Festac. While this was supposed to be a business trip, Cynthia maybe imagined she was probably going to have a good time with the two friends, Echezona and Olisa. And they seemed like gentlemen from the airport. They seemed pretty cool. They welcomed her with open arms. They offered to take her out, probably went out to get some drinks, bought her some stuff, offered to pay the hotel bills. So I don't know what may have been running in Cynthia's mind. She may have really trusted them, because if it was one guy, I would have understood. But the two guys, well, I don't know. At some point, as a young single girl at that age, by yourself, in a place where you don't know, you gotta be really careful. But then again, we had to learn a lot of horrible things that happened for all of us to have this mentality that we shouldn't just trust at least more than one guy or two. Even I, as a guy, I would be scared that I don't know these two guys from anywhere, and now they are booking hotels for me, and they are, I don't know. It's probably she thought the hotel was for her, and she hoped that by the end of the day, they would all go back home, since they all lived in Lagos. And then maybe the next morning, they will come and take her to the market and then buy the whole, and I think that's what they did. That night she came, they probably gave her space. They made her feel welcomed. They were sizing all her properties pretty much with one eye. They would check the BlackBerry phone. They would check the other mobile phone. They were just looking for things, trying to find her ATM. So they were just targeting and seeing the ways they could, or how much they could get from her. But she didn't see all these things. So they went to the hotel, probably ate, hung out, and by that night, they left her in the room. The next day was going to be the day that they were going to strike, that they were going to attack. And so prior to going back to her room, or prior to going to meet her back at the hotel, because I think they booked only one room for her, and then they went back home. So the next day, Echezona told Olisa to go and get Rofinol tablets, a particular drugs that they were going to inject into a Ribena drink that they will buy for her. And that drink was going to make her sleep off or drowsy, just pretty much those of get knocked out, so that they can ransack her, rob her, and maybe do one or two things with her. This is usually Echezona's system. This is what he does. He's not new to this. It is also possible that they had bought the drugs and kept aside, because they pretty much knew what they were going to do with Cynthia long before she booked her flight there. Now, this is where things started getting really, really intense. They succeeded in getting her the Ribena drink. And that Ribena drink had already been injected from the top with a syringe with the medication that was supposed to subdue her, was supposed to make her weak and probably doze off. So when Cynthia drank the Ribena, She's preparing and getting ready to start going about why she came to Lagos. Olisa and Echezona were waiting for the medicine to start working. And it sort of started working a little bit, but not as much as they would have wanted. And it was very somehow obvious to Cynthia that something wasn't right. She started feeling something off. And I want to believe that this was the moment she knew that these guys were up to something. And that usually would make somebody a lot more active. And I think that was what happened with her. She started fighting the drugs back. She was refusing to drop with the dizziness and the medication. She was now at a point, it is possible that she tried to leave the hotel room after she realized what the medicine or whatever she must have taken was doing to her. Usually or naturally, when somebody doesn't know they've been drugged, they just assume something is wrong with them and then they sleep off. They probably tell the guys, oh guys, please, I'm going to go back to sleep now. I want to just rest. I don't feel good. But when somebody senses that, oh, this feeling I'm feeling is out of the ordinary, and they believe with their heart that it's the two guys who did it to them, they would now have to put up a little bit of defense. And I think that was the case with Cynthia, because she started reaching to leave the hotel room. And when the two guys realized that these drugs was not holding her down as much as they would, they decided to use their hands to hold her down themselves. And this must have been very horrific for this young lady. Cynthia was pinned down, she was tied up, and her hands and legs were tied. And they began searching, asking her where all the money was. They were pretty much robbing her, asking her her ATM, because that was what they were targeting. Where is your ATM? What's your PIN? That was what they were going for. That was where the big money is. Apart from her 2 mobile phones that they would steal, they wanted the ATM. Unfortunately for them, Cynthia was not that girl. She was a pretty much sensible business woman, and she used checkbooks. She didn't use ATM cards. And obviously she was getting drowsy, so how would they have tried to make transfer? Were they even doing transfer then, in 2012? I don't remember. But they wanted just an ATM, but they couldn't get it. Cynthia didn't use ATM. And when they found out that she did not have ATM, these two guys were livid. They were disappointed. They had planned to wreck this girl from probably, over 10 million. She's a boutique owner from Abuja. She's a rich man's child. They probably did not know who her father was, but they assumed she's a rich kid. But when they found out that nothing, her bags were empty. The only thing they could get from her were probably her clothes, her shoes, and her mobile phones. No money. And they were angry and disappointed. This was what made them physically assault her and eventually force themselves on her sexually, pretty much. You get the gist. Her jewelries were taken from her. It was probably, some sources said 2, some other sources said 3 mobile phones. Her driver's license and international passport were also taken from her. And that was what they did the second day. Apparently, they booked the hotel for 2 nights, hoping to make her comfortable the first night, strike the second night, drug her, steal from her, run away and block her from Facebook the second night. And that was what they were doing. So after they were done ransacking her, it was said they waited till the next morning. The very next morning. And when they wanted to leave the hotel, they had to do it codedly. Lisa pretended to go to the bar of the hotel to chill. Then after a while, Echezona came out of the room and went to the receptionist to tell the receptionist that he wants to go and withdraw money, that his girlfriend is still in the room, that he'll be back shortly. And the receptionist was like, okay, fine, no problem. There's an ATM down the corner. And meanwhile, I've actually lodged at Cosmilla Hotel, but that was a long time ago. And I think I may have seen the room that happened, but I hadn't started this channel at the time. I was just a curious judge. So Echezona leaves to go for the ATM, but he was not going for any ATM. He was getting ready to leave. He was getting out of there. Once he was able to convince the receptionist that he wants to go and withdraw money, and the receptionist was like, no problem, he left the hotel. Olisa, who was at the bar, took the opportunity and went out from there. And that's how these 2 guys left. Now, when they left the hotel room, it was said they used one of Cynthia's mobile phone to call the hotel. And then they told the hotel receptionist, and kick that idiot out of that room. And that was when the receptionist was like, wait, what? And they repeated it. Go and get that idiot out of that room. Kick her out. I don't know what that means. It is possible they thought she was asleep Or it is possible that they knew she was dead. Remember, Echezona has already been doing this thing for a while. I mean, 6 girls came out to say that he had drugged and done similar things that they did to Cynthia to them. But they all lived to tell their story. However, Cynthia's case was very different. So that morning when they told the receptionist to go and kick the idiot out of there, it's unclear if they knew she was dead or if they did not know. But it is possible that they did because they pretty much spent the whole night with her. They pretty much did. At the same time, they may have assumed the drugs that they injected her with was what would make her sleepy. So they probably thought she was asleep. But how would you not know that she's gone? When the receptionist heard this unusual message, she quickly called her manager. They used the master key, went to the room, broke it open, and saw Cynthia's lifeless body. The police were called instantly and investigation started. But the police were at a disadvantage because there was no ID card around Cynthia. All her identity card had been taken, so they could not identify her. They did not know who she was. Now it's been 2-3 days Cynthia left for Lagos from Abuja, and her family were unable to reach her. They kept calling and calling and calling, and they could not get to her. This was when over there in Abuja, the family have already started saying she is a missing person. She's now a missing person. And over here in Lagos at First Stack, an unidentified body is found in a hotel that nobody knew who she was. The police took the body to a mortuary and it was deposited there. And they were hoping to find out who she was. It took days. They had to trace the phone number that was used to call the hotel. You know, the number that they used to call the hotel to get the body out of there. And they used that number and realized that that number belonged to the girl. So that phone number was what was used to find her name and her identity. For a whole week, the police are trying to find loved ones of Cynthia. And the loved ones of Cynthia in Abuja are trying to look for their loved one in Lagos. They kept calling her phone and it was somehow, some way switched off at the time. Eventually, one day, the family of Cynthia called the mobile phone and it rang and somebody picked up and it was believed to be Echezona, and it tells them that Cynthia had been kidnapped and that she sent 20 million naira. So they wanted to continue extorting from the parents, and the parents were willing to pay. However, they wanted to be sure Cynthia was alive. But Echezona could not provide Cynthia to speak on the phone. Unfortunately for them, the police were on the other end of the call trying to trace where this phone call was coming from, and that was when they knew the phone call was coming from First Stack, Lagos, Nigeria. And then a missing person was filed on Cynthia's name in First Stack, and it was eventually traced to a mortuary around that area where a body was deposited in a hospital morgue. When the family was able to reunite with Cynthia's deceased body, it was devastating. It was painful, especially for her brothers. They had to travel down there because this is the only daughter. This is a girl that they should be protecting, and I can't imagine what they would have gone through. I can't imagine how bad they would have felt they failed her. It's torturous. Before the body was released to them, an autopsy was done where it was concluded that she died of strangulation. And pretty much so, if that was the cause of her death, then it is clear that Echezona and Olisa knew she was dead and they killed her. So this was how Echezona and Olisa were arrested. Because, you see, these two guys thought they were done with Cynthia. They thought they had gotten away with it. Remember, this is not Echezona's first rodeo. This is not his first time doing this. It's unclear if this is his first time killing his victim. And to be very honest with you, it is possible that some girls have actually died in his hands in this process, given how bad it was with Cynthia. She was gagged, like at mouth. I don't want to go into details so we don't get sensitivity flagging of this video, but they pretty much went really far with Cynthia. So it is possible that they knew she was dead and that they killed her. It is very possible. Ordinarily, there would have been no need to even kill her because she based in Abuja. They could, all the way they've been getting away with it, they could have easily gotten away with this particular one. But the problem was that they were very angry and furious with the outcome that came out of Cynthia's robbery or kidnapping or whatever they want to call what they did. Cynthia to them was a big investment. Is it possible that they even used their own money to book her flights, used their own money to book the hotel? They were probably giving her gifts, and I think that would have been one of those few things that would have made Cynthia trust them. Because if Cynthia was the one spending her own money for these boys she met on Facebook, she probably would not have given or paid attention to them. So it is possible that they did it because they knew that more things would come out. She's a young business girl. They probably knew who her dad was, or they may not have known. But the fact that she owned a boutique that was big, Echezona thought he had cashed out. In his mind, this was going to be the big break, given that they were even calling, they even received a phone call charging the parents 10 million naira for her release, which means they were really looking to cash out from Cynthia. But when they discovered that she did not move around with her ATM, and when they searched all her properties and realized that they only could get her 3 BlackBerry phones, a shoe, and some handbag and outfit, they were angry. And I think that would have made them feel like physically causing her enough pain that would have, adding to the drugs that she had to take, adding to the fact that she was tied up and restrained. So I can imagine she would have struggled with a whole lot of things to even breathe in properly. So that anger may have played a role in the fact that Cynthia's case went extreme. And it's due to the fact that they could not get so much from Cynthia. All the things that they stole from her was probably not worth the amount of money they spent to bring her to Lagos to do what they did. And when they realized that, they had to probably not care. It wasn't a successful robbery for them. So they thought they were done with it. Usually what they did was that Echezona sold the mobile phones. He gave his cousin, who gave somebody else to sell it. And then the police were able to locate one of our mobile phones that was sold to somebody in Port Harcourt. But they couldn't get much information because at this time it was already second-hand, third-hand. You remember, this was BlackBerry era. So somebody was always buying a BlackBerry and somebody was always selling a BlackBerry. So by the time the police could find the final person with Cynthia's BlackBerry, they couldn't trace it properly back to who sold it to them. I mean, how for you to sell a mobile phone from Lagos to Port Harcourt, come on, it may have met a chain of people within weeks and months. So at this time, we're already hearing Cynthia's news. At this time, it's already published. At this time, the whole country is shaking. This was when we realized that people can actually kill you from Facebook. Me personally, I was in my 100 level this period of time. So I remember that this was a story that pretty much sealed the deal as to how careful we need to be when we meet people, friends, or lovers on Facebook. Because Facebook was a major social media at the time. I think Instagram was still, Instagram was mostly pictures then. So Facebook was the king of social media then. And the Cynthia story went everywhere. Now, Cynthia's story would have been gone with the wind, like many other victims that Echezona may have killed. And I guess he was used to that system. Even if he kills a girl, after a while, the police will stop checking. After a while, the police will, because these are people they meet online, so there's no way the police would have known. And he's a criminal, so he knew not to use his original phone number to communicate with these people. So he knew that over time, because I'm sure that period of time, dead bodies were being found in hotels and they were traded away. There were so many unidentified bodies, so many girls going missing. So nobody probably knew what was happening. The girls who were lucky enough to probably give Echezona enough money and enough mobile phones to spare their life got away and praised the Lord and probably could not trace him. So when it came to Cynthia, he thought it was one of those cases that would go away over time, which was the norm. But little did he know that Cynthia's parents and family were not playing. They did not come to play. They were keen on finding the killer. It's the least they could do. They already feel bad enough that they could not protect their only sister. And this is a major general's daughter. You know damn well that they would take it to the distance. And they did. 4 months later, the police were still on her case. They started going through her call logs and they found a phone number that belonged to Olisa's girlfriend. Now, Olisa was the assistant killer, so he wasn't the main character. Olisa stayed in Anambra State. So when they traced Olisa's girlfriend, the girl did not waste time. The girl was like, say no more police. Let me take you to where this boy is. and she took the police to where Olisa was. Olisa was handcuffed and arrested, and he did not even relent. He caved in immediately. He confessed, and then he took the police to Lagos to Echezonan's house. And when Echezonan was at home, when he realized that the gate has been mashed open and he was done for, he tried to run through his roof to hide, but yeah, it was time up for him. He was instantly caught and arrested. His house was raided, and it turns out that he was still pulling that same tricks because Cynthia's properties was found in his house. A pack of Ribena was found in his house. The sedation drug that they bought to poison Cynthia to make her sleep, many of it were found in his house, which means that this boy was still probably doing this whole time that we're looking for Cynthia's killer. 17 mobile phones were found in his house. 17 mobile phones. You know what 17 mobile phones is? This would have been not to add the phones that he may have sold. 22 SIM cards were found in this man's house, this young boy's house. He's a 300 level student. 2 diamond bank stamps. I don't even know what bank stamps was, but it must have been something back in the day. And 12 bank cards, 12 ATM cards. So it was obvious that Cynthia was probably not his only victim that he had killed. For you to have this much, then definitely some of the girls did not survive your ordeal. The drugs that he bought, the sedation drugs, they had to ask him who sold it to him. And the police was led to a pharmacist named Osita. And that pharmacist was picked up and arrested. This is why as a pharmacy, before you sell drugs to people, nobody are using it for, especially when you're selling it in large quantity. Nobody need that much, especially in a short period of time. So Osita was picked up because they assumed he played a role in the death of Cynthia, which he probably did, which he maybe did not know that was what he was doing, but he sold the drugs that was used to sedate the victims of this young man. A young man named Nonso was equally picked. And I think Nonso, I don't know if he was Echezonan's brother or Olisa's brother, but it's possibly his Olisa's brother because Olisa is the Anambra boy. And you know, Anambra people, they were already dealing. So probably that was why, and that was how Echezonan became friends with Olisa. You know, the mobile phone dealing, that was their major hustle point. Lure a girl, drug her, rob her, steal her phone, a BlackBerry, and sell it. And so I guess that was how Nonso, Olisa's brother, came in the mix, and he was equally arrested. And that was how the case went to court. And during the court case, it was revealed, or Echezonan's argument was that Cynthia was his girlfriend, and that they had an argument, and then he left the hotel angrily, that he loved her, that he was his fiancé, that you know, he was trying to make it seem, and I think his lawyers must have put him up to it. He was trying to make it look, he wanted to get a lesser sentence by saying it was a crime of passion. I don't know if you get what I mean. But with all this evidence of mobile phones, SIM cards, and you know, drugs and Ribena in your house, who are you deceiving, bro? Did you think Nigerians were that stupid? He tried it and he failed it, because when he claimed that Cynthia was his girlfriend so that he can argue crime of passion and probably get a lesser sentencing, they asked him, okay, where is Cynthia from? What is even her surname? What is her mother's name? How old is Cynthia? They asked him basic question about his so-called girlfriend and his so-called fiancé, since you want to now claim the girl you murdered in cold blood was your fiancé. He couldn't answer, and that was how the judge was like, this boy is a trash. This boy is trash. This boy is a joke. He tried it, and he failed. And also during the trial, about 5 to 6 men came out and identified Echezonan to be the one who had drugged, raped, and robbed them. And I'm sure some of these women had already made reports to the police, but typically these are women who probably don't have the money, and we know how Nigerian police is. If nobody is checking for your case, nobody is investigating your case. If you don't come from a well-to-do home, nobody cares that much. Your case would not last as long. So you will just be ignored and pushed aside. But the fact that their case was already reported, it was easy for them to be brought to the court to testify against Echezona, and ultimately, enough evidence was proven beyond reasonable doubt that Echezona and Olisa did what they did to Cynthia in cold blood. So after 6 years, I don't know why this case took so long. After 6 years, eventually, the judge found Echezona and Olisa guilty and sentenced them to death. Osita and the guy who sold Nonso, okay, Osita is the pharmacist, and Nonso, the phone seller, were discharged because for the most part, it was clear that They did not know how these guys were getting the phone that they were giving them, and they did not know who was using the drug. They probably thought it was something that was important. So the court did not find them guilty, and they were ultimately discharged. And that was how Cynthia Osokogo got her justice and remained in the history books of tragedies that had befallen a lot of young girls who befriended total strangers online. It's sad anyway, even people you know would even do this to you. So Cynthia's story was a big learning curve. I still remember this incident. I know how it felt. I remember I was in French school at the time. I remember I was with a friend, a young girl too, who pretty much I thought looked like Cynthia online. And she too was also in the middle of talking with somebody on Facebook and online too. And when that Cynthia case happened, it was panic. We were in Port Harcourt at the time, so it was the whole thing. This was the same year that, if I'm not mistaken, the Alu 4 incident happened by the end of the year in December. So that one took another turn. And I think that same year too, another man jumped from a high building one time. So there was a lot of things. 2012 was I feel like we need to do a section about 2012, because 2011, 2012 was one of the year I remember a whole lot of terrible things happened. There were disasters that year, and it was like a peak of a new era of crime being committed on social media. It was like a new beginning. It was a scary period. I still remember how 2012 would have felt. Whew. If you survived 2012, then you probably survived the end of an era, or you probably met the beginning of an era. Because after Cynthia Osokogo's case, many more girls probably still did not learn. Many more girls did not even hear about her story. So we constantly got to see similar situations. It continued on. However, those who knew her story became more careful and dodged a whole lot of bullets, because there were so many HSNAM on the social media. When the social media became popular, people started using it for evil, and so many people fell victims. I remember a story of a man who was meeting a young girl, not only women, a rich elderly man. You know, I think he worked in, was it Shell? He worked in Shell, and he was texting with this young girl back and forth, not knowing that this was a fake profile. And after he went to meet this girl at a place, hoping the girl would come and join him in his car, a group of guys bumped on him, attacked him, stabbed him, robbed him, took his phone and stole his car. And that was how the man died. And I don't think that story ever made it to the blogs, or maybe it did, but I remember that story. I remember it happening. And boy, a lot of people social media was just a horrifying place, scary place. And this was the era people were like, oh, if you meet somebody online, please don't meet them behind closed door the first day. And that was probably how it's just sad that this girl's story became a learning curve for a lot of us. I mean, and I think her story probably saved a lot of lives too. Did. I hope she continues to find rest, and I hope her family have been able to move on from the pain. And it's difficult. Such a thing would be very difficult. I don't have a sister. We're all boys, and I can imagine if I did, we would all want to be protective of her, and then somehow we were unable to. Man, it's gonna kill. I probably, if I was one of Cynthia's brother, I would have just find a way to just pay a police officer enough money to give me one-on-one with the HSNAM. Maybe not Olisa, just leave Olisa out of it. It's not important. I want that HSNAM. If I was the sister, I would just beg the police, give me one. I won't kill him. I want to deal. You got to beat the anger out of you. Beat the anger out. But our law don't allow that, I guess, because that's a crime on its own. But I would have done that anyway. So anyhow, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and let me know where you're watching from. Don't forget to also turn on your notification button, so whenever there's a new video, you'll be the first to get notified.